would love to start with a little history.
Mhm.
I've never known that much about Stratos, but I knew Genia really well, and we had Stefan Rover on the program multiple times before and after that acquisition. And I've been over to the Pleasanton facility, and but then it was just kind of a period where we didn't know what was going on. Right? Would a technology emerge from this actually? And it did, and you've delivered big time. So what are some of the highlights for you looking back on what got you to today?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, I can say. So I like to call it SBX a wildly ambitious chemistry. But I think Keith Robeson had a better way. He said he referred to SBX as a bar bet between chemists, which I which I thought
Uh,
was
Oh, okay. So what would be the bet?
that can is this even possible to do? Because the
Okay.
chemistry was so outlandish. I've shown structures before, and you can literally hear people gasping at what I was showing because it is kind of a new way of looking at things about what's possible. And sometimes that's perceived as being wacky, but I actually was flattered. I thought it was a great a great way to say it because sometimes that is how things look when you see it for the first time, because the nature of SBX, and I can talk about in a bit, like what it is and
Hmm.
describe it in
Hmm.
detail. It's been kind of a long journey to get here. And if it's okay, go back a little bit on the history here. My inspiration was PCR at first. Not surprising that SBX ended up at Roche, right?
Yeah, yeah, the PCR champions.
PCR champion. So, it was not a surprise at all, but also manual Sanger sequencing. When I first did manual Sanger sequencing, I was hooked. I,
Hmm.
I thought this was the most amazing thing. This is, 35 years ago. This is a long time ago, but I just thought it was amazing. And it really inspired me to think about, look at how powerful this tool is. Look at what you can do. Tool, and great, you're doing a couple thousand bases in a day at best, but it kind of led my thinking about and how I was inspired to think about technology and the impact that developing tools can have. And so, I got really lucky in that my first biotech company I worked at, called Darwin Molecular, in the mid 90s, the guy heading that was the guy who started the Human Genome Project at DOE, David Gallus. And so it was just a great place to be. Leroy Hood was one of the scientific founders of the company. And it was just an inspiring place. And in fact, a couple of my coworkers just won the Nobel Prize. You know, 2 weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago, Fred Ramsdell and Mary Brunkow won the Nobel Prize. It was an inspiring, great place. And I was lucky to be able to be there and have that experience. And in terms of the work I was able to do, also really lucky because I got to work on protein engineering and developing tools. These are genomics tools. These are all really important things if you're going to think about making a sequencing technology, especially single molecule sequencing technology. So,
Okay, so you've been there all along with all the major advancements. You worked with the great players. You're
yes.
just a bit of a late bloomer.
Yeah, I had hair at the time, it was yeah, yeah, long hair actually. It was funny. But yeah, late bloomers. So it's always been there, kind of thinking about, how to solve this problem of sequencing. How do you advance sequencing? And in all of this, I actually it's kind of funny story is I, we spun out a company during that era and at the end of the 90s, and a company called Rapogene that sold to Qiagen. Well, the guy who was the president of that little spin out was a guy named Nick McCook, who was the CEO, became the CEO of Solexa as soon as he left from there, and which then became Illumina
Illumina.
technology. So, I talk to Nick every once in a while, and he was an inspiration to me as well. And so it just kind of things lined up that this was going to be something that was always an interest in wanting to do. As I
So,
went through, go ahead.
sorry, I'm curious. So it's always been a project in your
Always.
mind. You've been working away on it.
Yes.
2007 is when you say you came up with it. So in the meantime, you're looking at all this incredible stuff going on in sequencing, right? It goes to single molecule. Then we find out that PacBio didn't have great accuracy, but if you stacked it up, through consensus, then it had fantastic, and they promoted what they call long reads. And fast forward, then we get Element and Ultima coming on the program. I'm curious, did you think, oh, it's too late? I mean,
There were moments. I mean, I'd always have to, every time a technology would come out and they had raised so much money, I'd have to go to the board and say, okay, this is what we think. about what's going on and where the limits are going to be. And I have to say, we kind of nailed it in most of the cases. We predicted some of the challenges that the other technologies would have. And so yeah, it was always hard because we a little bit about this when we went out to do our fundraising, September 2008. So
Mm,
this is Stratos Genomics. So a week
yes,
after
that's
Lehman
right.
Brothers collapses, we're going to go and raise money. So again, this set the tone. We had to figure out how to survive and keep advancing the idea while other people had raised money already. PacBio, these others, they'd raised some money, and so they could keep going during that phase. So we just kind of figured it out, and that led to kind of a certain rigorousness and scrappiness of our approach. And I think that was necessary to keep inventing because there's a lot of inventions that had to come together to make this work.